We're here with Marcus Stanway-Williams from Hello Lamppost. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So hey, I'm Marcus. I've been with Hello Lamppost for 3 years now. So my role is head of projects. So that involves everything kind of full suite from setting up projects to ensuring that they're successful, reporting on them, and everything in between. We're a startup. I've been going for around 4 years now. So Hello Lamppost, for those of you who don't know, it's an interactive platform which allows any citizen in any city to have an interactive, playful conversation with a piece of street furniture. So typically that is lampposts, bus stops, benches, bins, but could be anything to do with statues, cultural reference points, anything you'd find in a city. We kind of make interactive through text-based conversations.
Sounds cool. So how did Hello Lamppost come about, and what was your vision, and what sort of problems are you trying to solve through your work?
Sure. So Hello Lamppost was kind of founded off the observation that people pass through areas of cities and they have thoughts, they have opinions, they have memories, which are triggered but not necessarily captured anywhere. Hello Lamppost was designed to kind of provide a digital layer to a city, so people can leave remnants of those thoughts and opinions and ideas they have. The first Hello Lamppost installation was actually in Bristol back in 2015. It was the winning entry of a competition called Playable Cities. So that was the first installation set up citywide in Bristol, which was a tremendous success. And from there, it was the kind of concept was drag and dropped across various cities across the world. Recently, we've taken more of a focus on helping local authorities with like the challenging issues that they're struggling with. So gaining community feedback, ensuring that feedback is from a diverse audience, and kind of innovating a very old school traditional process of community participation.
Cool.
That's really great to hear, and thank you for that. Just building off what you were just saying about community engagement. So from looking into your work, obviously the key part of your work is gathering feedback from people about their city. What rights do you think citizens have to their city and to a stake in its direction and future change? And why is it important that we understand and consider the needs of citizens when developing public spaces?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think ultimately where we fit in is helping to improve democracy. Democracy means a lot of different things to many different people. To us, I guess it means constant ability to input and have your say on decisions which affect you. Cities especially are quite complex systems. They're very old traditionally. A lot of the architecture and kind of who run cities is quite convoluted. So being able to have your say on issues which affect you is always going to be really important. So kind of rights that a citizen has with its city is to contribute and to kind of change. I'd say are the two key rights.
Thank you.
That's great. So what's your experience of collaborating with councils from around the world, and how do their approaches and attitudes to public engagement differ?
Cool. So yeah, that's a good question. Hello Lamppost was obviously deployed first in Bristol in the UK, but the kind of concept and deployment has been transplanted and popped up in many cities across the world. A few of notable cities that come to mind are Singapore, Austin in Texas, Mesa in Arizona. There's a few kind of early ones which were deployed in Northern America. I think in Northern America there's a bit more red tape at like a higher level, but a lot of American cities have quite a lot of legislation and say over what they do in cities. the city concept in Northern America is slightly different to here in the UK. A city can be much smaller, but they have a legislation over like a large area. In terms of how approaches and attitudes to public engagement differ, I'd say the thing that it doesn't differ between them is the need to engage. Public engagement it can be seen as a problem, but it can also be seen as an opportunity to like really get a wide range of feedback. But all municipalities and councils struggle with the same thing, which is getting people to engage. Town hall meetings typically are kind of attended by the same people with the same voices who have the same opinions. So you kind of get the kind of whoever speaks loudest gets the most attention drawn to their issue. So democratizing that in any way, opening it up to a wider pool or a wider audience is always going to be a promising thing.
I guess that's one of the good things about what you do. It lets anybody with a phone give their opinions and let their voice be heard, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, every client we've worked with has obviously had different objectives. The overarching objective is to engage and consult, but that has varied through environmental awareness, student engagement, community participation, enhancing visitor experiences. Everywhere we deploy, the goal is the same, but the way that we approach it is very different. So I think that's where a big feature of the tool which comes into play is it being flexible. We've made hundreds of different objects talk about hundreds of different topics, and there really is no ceiling to what a potential object could discuss with you.
Oh, brilliant. That's really interesting to hear, and to hear more about the kind of experiences of it across different parts of the world. Just linking back to what you were saying about the kind of challenges of participation, so things like, I think we're all aware that kind of focus groups, and they often draw in the kind of the usual voices, and online urban kind of planning consultancy processes can be quite exclusive and quite difficult for those without a planning background to kind of even understand, let alone kind of give feedback on. So just building on that, what do you think are some of the main barriers that limit the effective communication between councils and the public, and how kind of creative solutions such as Hello Lamppost might be able to kind of bridge this gap?
So I think the obvious barrier at the moment is going to be like resource and capacity. We've certainly found that councils in the UK at the moment are stretched. They've obviously got COVID, which is taking a priority as to a lot of their communications department, tied up with messaging around social distancing, etc. So resource is probably the number one that we come across, is people not having the time or the people to allocate to correctly and like extensively get feedback from people. Now that is kind of a paradox. Once Hello Lamppost is installed, it is very kind of low maintenance, so there's a constant interactive touch point on the street, so it could take away the workload of people who need to be out and about engaging with clipboard surveys, setting up town hall meetings, call centres, etc. Budget allocations, I think a lot of councils, certainly in this country, are quite risk averse. They'll typically spend money on activities which have been successful in the past. So they'll be more inclined to go with like a safer bet rather than trying out something new or innovative. Which I'd say is also a bit of a paradox, because those traditional methods are increasingly less effective and expensive. We kind of know that people are on their phones a lot now. People are looking for digital ways of doing things which they would usually have to do in person. If you look at the digitization of council services across the last 20 years, everything has gone online, just because necessity dictates. So I think people are more willing now to get in touch with their council virtually, and I think that's only been accelerated by the last kind of 12 months.
Yeah, if someone can spend like 5 or 10 minutes just talking to a lamppost virtually as a way of getting feedback from them, it's in some ways it's a lot more efficient than running a half a day focus group with a select group of people. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You were talking earlier about how a lot of community engagement is it's full of the same loud voices. So what can be done to ensure that we get feedback from a broader range of demographics? And how can we make community engagement as inclusive as possible?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is making it inclusive and as possible for everyone. That doesn't apply to just Hello Lamppost, that applies to all engagement.
Yeah.
So I guess making it accessible is the first thing, and making it desirable to interact with. Anything that's usually quite eye-catching and engaging will draw in more people. The way we do that is, firstly with kind of signage. We use on-street signage to tell people that they can interact with their local area. So that's using very big, bold colouring and branding so that it catches their attention, and it gets them interested in engaging. Another way that we've always found is a really low barrier is the technology behind Hello Lamppost.
Yeah.
So we use SMS as the key platform. We have explored WhatsApp, we've explored Facebook Messenger, but we've always found that 99% of people in the UK have an SMS enabled phone. So in many ways it is the most accessible platform, because everybody knows how to use it. So regardless of your device, regardless of your age, you are able to join in. And that's always been like a really big thing for us, is making it as accessible as possible. We've also, this is something we've been asked a lot, is who interacts with Hello Lamppost. Inherently, Hello Lamppost is anonymous. That's something that we make clear on signage and within conversations. Whilst you're being asked feedback, it is inherently private between you and the council. We don't track any data, or we don't take any personal information. It's just a two-way conversation. So with that in mind, we've tried to use objects in all areas of cities that people may be. People are often in the park, people are often in the high street, people are often on the fringes of towns and centres, they're not always on the high street. So we try to always ensure that there's a range of different objects in whichever geographical area we're launching, just so that we capture the voices of everyone.
Thank you. That's really interesting to hear, and to hear the kind of thinking behind it being anonymous and having SMS versus WhatsApp and Facebook. Just off the back of that, and kind of leading into our next question. So using interactive street furniture as a digital community engagement tool is a really cool idea. And it was particularly interesting what you were saying about kind of trying to capture the kind of emotions and the feeling in that moment, rather than it being detached in that moment and kind of 2 weeks later have to fill out some kind of online survey about something. Just wondering, given it's anonymous and kind of in the moment, what kind of then happens with the feedback, and how it's then the kind of result of that is then fed back to people who've kind of put the feedback in. So whether, as it's anonymous, what the kind of next stage in the communication process is, that'd be really interesting to hear, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and an interesting question. I think everything that we do personally is geared towards closing the feedback loop. That's a term you'll often hear, is you get feedback of people, you make changes, but how do you tell those people that their voices or opinions actually counted for something? So there's a few ways that you can do that. I guess the way that we use the most is, sorry, I'm just going to take a pause there.
That's okay, yeah.
Need a drink. Cool. So yeah, there are a number of ways that we ensure that the feedback loop is closed. One of them is simply a feature that we've built into conversations. When you're contributing your ideas to a conversation, it's nice to know that other people are also doing the same, and it might be interesting to see what other people have contributed. We have a feature when you're asked a question and you provide an answer, the response will also share something that a fellow citizen has also said. So if you're chatting to a lamppost in the park, and it asks you, do you think that street lighting is good around here? And you say, yes, I think it's fine. It might share a response from someone else saying, no, I'd like more lighting at night because I feel unsafe. That could be a piece of feedback that's shared back. So that kind of builds the idea that you're part of a community of people who are contributing rather than in isolation, just giving your feedback. We've also in the past built like public dashboards for projects. So at the end of a conversation, it will sign off with a message, and it will direct you towards a public dashboard where you can see all responses submitted. You can see aggregations of how many people said this, how many people said that, and also any live responses that have come through. So that again, it just gives kind of credibility that the conversation you had is part of an engagement.
Yeah.
And I'd say the third way that we kind of close that feedback loop is through with clients who create reports or engagement outcomes. We like to try and share those back through Hello Lamppost. So if you have a conversation with Hello Lamppost and then you came back to that same object 3 months later, you might be directed towards a report which shows the outcomes and the kind of we listened, we heard, and here's what we're doing about it. I think that's a really key thing, that people are happy to contribute, but they really need to be validated in knowing why they contributed and what that actually led to.
Definitely, thank you. It was really useful to hear, to kind of understand the next step of how people's feedback will be used and what they're kind of, like you said, closing the feedback loop and how that would be done.
Okay, so what advice would you give to somebody looking to engage their community members in their placemaking or tactical urbanism project? And what advice would you give to city councils that were looking to do the same thing?
Cool. So I'll probably speak most about placemaking. Tactical urbanism is something that's a fairly new concept to me. So I think it'd be good to hear your thoughts on that as well, just so I can get up to speed. Placemaking, I think, is something that's often talked about and has been, you've seen it everywhere over the past few years in council documents and various community groups. For us, placemaking is really about going out and meeting your community where they are. So not taking them out of their comfort zone, not trying to bring them into a meeting room or a town hall to have their thoughts. It's about chatting to them while they are experiencing the community that they live in. And I guess a key way of doing that is making it hyperlocal. We use this term a lot, hyperlocal. What does hyperlocal mean? I guess local is actually quite broad. Like where is local anymore? Whereas hyperlocal could literally boil down to someone's favorite park, someone's favorite spot, a street that they cycle across every day, a road junction that they've been finding difficult to cross for 20 years. I'd say it's all about like the micro level within any town or urban environment. Where are people having problems navigating it? Where are people desperate to give feedback on it? and you want to hear from the people that are closest to it. And the best way of doing that is going out and meeting them and kind of bringing engagement to the streets, to them, rather than expecting them to come off the streets and use their time to kind of contribute.
Definitely.
I'd say that's probably that would be my advice on placemaking. The other thing that we've always found powerful, and kind of the whole experience is built around, is play. Hello Lamppost is fun. It's designed to be inherently fun whilst passively achieving outcomes and insights. Play is very pervasive. Once people start enjoying something or having fun, that behavior is very likely to be replicated. Curiosity is the first emotion that we kind of learn as a child. We want to touch things and play with things and find out what they do. And I don't think we ever really lose that. I don't think we lose our kind of curiosity and creativity and how we explore stuff. So a central objective is to keep it fun and playful. If you do that, people will follow.
Yeah, that's great. I think, encouraging people to explore their city is probably the best way to get them actually thinking about their place and how they want to improve it. Definitely, I agree.
Yeah, and I think tactical urbanism. What would your guys' advice be? What does that speak to?
I think what we are kind of taking to be tactical urbanism for this festival is just kind of the short-term action for long-term change definition from Mike Lydon in the US, and the idea that projects can be very, very short-term, just a day kind of pop-up, or a month or a year, be very low cost, but then with the aim of kind of demonstrating something about the way an urban space could be different with view of long-term change. So just short-term interventions like a pop-up bike lane using really, really low-cost materials, just traffic cones or chalk. So that's the kind of definition I think we're working with. Alex, do you agree on that?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I think it fits in nicely with what you do at Hello Lamppost as well, in the sense that it's very much about people interacting quickly with the place around them through a lamppost or through a bench or something, and that, I think that fits nicely with the ideas of tactical urbanism, of like putting something up quickly just to show people how it can be done differently, get them thinking about their place, and then that can be used to inform more long-term decisions.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you guys you've hit it on the head there. It's about changing behavior, isn't it? It's about opening people's eyes up to like a different way of doing things, rather than just accepting what's always been there. It's trying something short term which can force people to think, well, maybe we should do this differently, maybe we could do this differently. I think a really good example that we've been a part of is play streets. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of play streets. A few councils that we've worked with have had play streets, and it's such a good incentive to get people to reimagine what a city street could be used for, by bringing out children to play, bringing out parents to enjoy the street in a kind of different way. And it really changes people's perspectives on what roads are for. Like, are they just for cars, or are they for everyone?
There's an organisation called Playing Out, based out that do a lot of work around that. It's really interesting.
Cool.
I think we've kind of already touched on our last question, which was going to be about kind of advice for people taking part in the workshops that we're running next week, and who are new to placemaking. But I think we've kind of covered that with the last question, and it was great to hear your ideas on play and how individuals and also city councils and things can become more involved. But I'd just like to slightly rephrase it. So obviously we're still unfortunately in lockdown, and this has been such a difficult year for so many, and I think something we're really hoping is that tactical urbanism, in light of this, can provide some real hope, and placemaking techniques can provide some real hope moving forward out of the hopefully kind of post-pandemic environment. So would there be a piece of kind of hope or a piece of advice or maybe a projection for the future of how placemaking and tactical urbanism approaches might be particularly useful post-COVID?
Wow, yeah, asking me to predict the future.
$1 million question.
Yeah, that's it. It's the essence of everything. I think just remembering that urban environments are kind of nothing without people. It was great to see some photography early in the pandemic of these kind of urban scapes just completely abandoned. And while in one sense it's quite beautiful in an artistic way, it's actually quite sad to see that without anybody there, everything is essentially just bricks and mortar. So I guess just thinking about those environments with the people in mind. So how do people want to live? How do they want to work? How do they want to play? And thinking about people are going to return to cities and streets. So just make sure we're accommodating for those people. I think another thing is not being too fixed on what an object or a place is for. So thinking about assets and structures as multi-purpose. A statue of in Trafalgar Square is essentially a statue, but it could be an interactive reference point for people to learn about history. It could be a chance for them to engage with culture on their terms. It might be an accessible way of getting local information about what to do next or how to get somewhere. So I think just increasingly thinking that everything is going to return and be increasingly interactive. So making them functional for all audiences. And I guess just encouraging others to explore and share within their communities. I think whilst the pandemic has restricted the distances that people travel, it's actually shown that a lot of local communities are very resilient in what popped up in such a short space of time in terms of community goodwill and people wanting to help and people wanting to share stories about local environments that might have been neglected. Suddenly small streets in places which were never really considered are suddenly the hub, the thriving hub of communities. So I think it's definitely going to have an impact on city centres, but I think it's really important to look at what's going to happen to smaller areas within cities and towns.
Thank you. That was really nice to kind of end on a really hopeful note, and I really like the idea of just rethinking the kind of fundamental I guess uses and properties of different parts of the city, like the interactive statue. And I think the world would be a much better place if we can go forward with something like that into the future. So thank you for that. I think that's all of our questions, Alex, unless there's anything else, or unless Marcus, if there's anything else you wanted to cover or discuss.
No, nothing other than me. Apart from I'm gonna really have a look into tactical urbanism. It's been really great to hear your guys' ideas on it, and something I'm gonna look into.